I'm Elise Whittemore, and this is my BCA Artist Studio Tour. Welcome to my studio that is all of 1 week old. I moved in here just last weekend. This is an old barn from the 1830s up here on Grand Isle. We've been renovating it for about 8 months, and I'm very excited to be in this space and unpacking. Before now, my studio was made up of different places for literally different times of the week. Daily, I have a work table in my living room where I can at least keep seeing the work that I'm thinking about, and I can touch for a little bit every day. When I had more than a few hours to spend, I went down to my basement studio and worked on larger pieces and stored a lot of my work. On the weekends, I spend time at BCA's community print studio to do my printmaking there, and I had a flat file there. And then I have a table at my partner's house up here on Grand Isle where I would work on the weekends. During this pandemic, I moved up here, and like I said, a week ago, I moved into this space. So this is a really particularly wonderful time to have a tour and to share this new event in my life. During this pandemic, I've been thinking a lot about home and boundaries, confinement. I've been living in a different place, and now that this barn is finished, I'm moving in here, and I'm going to live creatively in here, and finally having an opportunity to spread out and see everything I work on, everything I work with, all in the same place. So this is pretty wonderful. I've been cutting up prints and layering and sewing them since last summer. But these past few months, that activity has gotten smaller, and I've been working on this series of collages. Literally, they're made from scraps. And I've kind of been thinking of them that way, not making new prints or printing on new paper, but making do with what I have on hand. And that feels like an apt response while we're all living in a stay-at-home order. In looking at old patterns, that's another thing I've been doing. The stitching's been based on the log cabin quilt, which is a pattern like building with Tinker Toys. I like that it can be like a maze or interlocking squares and rectangles. They kind of describe the shape of containment, and they can be closed, they can be open. Like everybody else, I've been reading a lot during this time, and something from a book by Ocean Vuong has really stayed with me. Beauty demands replication. And the way he describes that is that an image is prolonged in the eye, making more of it, making it last longer. I really like that. I think of how I've been doing this similar pattern, these same stitches, over and over again. And the act is meditative and calming, which is certainly helpful right now, and it's while I'm being so anxious. But I like thinking about how it makes things last in my line of sight, in my mind, in my hand, with muscle memory. This project for most of the winter started out as little colograph plates made out of cardboard, mostly with glued sandpaper or painter's tape or droplets of glue and grit on it. And I've been printing these singly as little squares based on another old quilt pattern called the Drunkard's Path, which is typically printed in a bright color contrast, navy blue and white or bright red and white. And it's basically a curved shape that takes up about 2/3 of the square. So it's either a positive or a negative shape that you're looking at, and the resulting negative plate space, which is white, allows for this wandering path or drunken path to occur within the solid color field. I started by stitching them in sections, small sections, and just concentrating on the curved shapes and enjoying stitching in response to that with white thread that just, when it went through the soy ink that I used, picks up some of that color. So that started to dirty the areas, the white areas in between, so the tracks became more visible. And that was the first part of this process. And then as I started to collect them, they began to feel like a blanket forming, and I thought I needed to take the idea of a quilt more literally. And now I'm in the process of sewing all the sections together and laying down the grid on top of it, which helps create the sense of the three-dimensional sense of a quilt and how the fabric puffs out a little. This is commercial grade filter paper, and it drapes and acts a little bit like fabric, which I like very much. And the more I layer it and reinforce this shape over it, the thickness, the three-dimensionality, the physicality of a quilt has started to kind of emerge, and that has pleased me a lot when the material starts to act the way I envisioned it, and now it feels like it's becoming that. So this is what's going on here up on Grand Isle. You can see more of my work and contact me through my website, elisewhittemore.com, and at Elise Whittemore on Instagram. Thanks.